fans? Welcome back to another Bitcast. I'm here with Zach. How you doing, Zach?
Hey man, how you doing? Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday, man. So how you been, man? You been watching anything good?
Yeah, I've been I don't know if you would consider it good. I saw Argyle the other day.
oh,
I saw Spaceman, Adam Sandler movie.
how was that?
It was okay.
So,
It's different from his normal stuff, which is fine, right? But it's okay. It's one of those things where, it's not very long, but you just all right, well, we might as well just finish it to see how it is. Good endings and all that stuff, troubled characters, a typical Adam Sandler movie.
yeah, yeah, that sounds about right.
That's
I
okay for
mean,
entertainment, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess we should talk a little bit about the Oscars. I didn't see anything, and I didn't read anything yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I heard some things. I heard, um, The Boy and the Heron won Best Animated Video as opposed to Spider-Man to the Spider-Verse. I saw both. I might have went the other way, but that's just me.
I would have
Uh,
gone the other way.
did you see both?
I did not, but I know the other ones like quite well. It's not like I was knocking against it, but I don't know. It's just
I'll tell you why. Like I was telling my boy, right? I was like, because he couldn't believe it either. I was like, look, the Oscars are more about the story behind it as opposed to
to the actual
the
story
actual
itself.
performance or the
Yeah.
actual art or whatever. Um, because look at last year, everybody thought Angela Bassett should have won over on Jamie Lee Curtis. Nothing against Jamie Lee Curtis. I do agree. I feel like Angela Bassett should have won it, but Jamie Lee Curtis had a better story, had a better coming to this point, her long career and the struggle she went through. So the story behind it was why she won.
But
Same
you're
thing with
campaigning for it too. Some people are better at press than others too. When you're doing your whole worldwide campaign type of thing. So it's like you're running for office when you're trying to get for the Oscars. Like you have to have that charisma, the campaign trail fatigue sets in, and some people just don't want to do it. And that's part of the reason why Leo didn't win for as long as he did. He didn't campaign the
yo.
way that he could have.
I'm glad you said that because so many people don't know that. Like I was telling my wife that, like people like you said, Leo didn't win for the longest time, and it was because of that I figured
Yes,
out that I learned you actually have to campaign for this stuff. It costs
yes,
money. It costs your time. Like
yes,
it's not an easy thing. It's like you're running for office, like you said.
yeah.
So sometimes people are like they didn't get a nomination. Maybe they didn't want one. Maybe they didn't want to spend the money. Maybe they were
It's a
tired
lot.
from working
Yeah,
and it
it's
didn't want to
exhausting.
campaign. So like you said, it's exhausting. It takes a lot of work. So yeah, like, but it's also the story behind. Like when I heard Robert Downey Jr. won for Oppenheimer, I was like, of
I was
course
very
he won.
happy.
I was happy too. Not that he didn't deserve it, but his story behind it was also,
Oh yeah,
why he
everyone
won.
likes him.
Yeah, everybody likes him. I mean, look at his path towards it now. People keep saying he should have won it for Chaplin. He didn't
Eh,
get anything.
the
Um,
judge maybe more than that.
his struggles with addiction and then his redemption arc coming back in his personal life and in his professional life, and then him reassessing what his professional career was because for the longest time, no matter what he did, he was always considered Iron Man after he came back. But
Well, that's
then,
okay though, right? Because that's
that's
what
okay.
that's what got him. That's what got him back into the spotlight and not making him seem like he was a complete delinquent. Because he was in
That's
prison for what, three
okay.
years?
But still to this day, those kind of movies have like a I don't know, a stench to them to where people I mean, uh Mulaney, John Mulaney, I think his name is, the comedian, made a joke about that. Angela Bassett getting a nomination for Black Panther is like, I forgot what he said, but I was like, come on, bro, like these movies are good. Like there's good and bad ones. Like The Flash, bad one. Like
Oof.
you know, like The Batman, great one. There's a spectrum to all these movies, just like any other genre of movie. There's a spectrum to this.
You know
Okay,
who I was
so
happy that won? Cord Jefferson.
For oh, word, he won for what?
Screenplay.
And that's another thing too, because it takes because the Oscars is kind of like a popularity contest. You know, up and coming filmmakers like Cord Jefferson, they use screenplay as a way to get into the Oscar, run. Screenplay is the best way over the years to get
I
the
feel like the
newcomers in.
winners this time around wasn't just checking a box. It was like real legitimate people who decided to win this time. And it's like, oh, I forget the actress for the Killers of the Flower Moon. What's her name?
Oh, Lily.
Lily Gladstone, something like
Yes,
that.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
She did a fantastic job. And then Emma Stone won again. Part of it is because she's already won. You get that nepotism because you've won before. So
Yeah.
if you're going up against someone who's new, not all the voters are going to feel a particular way just because she's like the first in this category ever type of thing that they're going to vote for it, you know?
So I'm looking at a list of the nominees and the winners. Shout out to Variety. The way they did this article is just it shows all the nominees and the one that's
You
won
know who
is
got
bold instead of
gypped?
winner.
Zac Efron. Didn't even get
Uh,
any
yeah.
love.
For what best actor?
Yeah. He would have done great. Him and oh my god, I completely Paul what's his name? The guy from the Bear, what's his name?
Oh,
His brother in there.
Jeremy
Jeremy
Allen.
Allen. Thank you.
Yes,
I
yes,
was going to
yes,
say
yes.
Paul Allen. I was like, no, Paul Allen was like the co-founder of Microsoft.
The funny thing is,
No,
I don't see anything here for Iron Claw.
yeah,
So I don't think
exactly.
they ran. I don't think they campaigned for any.
Dude, that was so well done. That was probably, be honest with you,
Uh,
that and American Fiction were the two best movies I saw for
oh
last for last. Those are the two best
yeah,
ones I think I've seen. And
I,
I love
I
I
I would
love
probably agree with you.
Oppenheimer. Like that's fantastic. Like don't get me wrong, but you know Chris Nolan, it was going to be great. Iron Claw, you didn't, no one really thought, oh yeah, this is going to be like what it did. That was you want to talk about great tragedy and just hitting it off so perfectly over pretty much over this guy's life, you know.
Yeah, it was a sleeper hit for sure. It was in the theaters for a long time for a independent film too because it was so good.
I love
So
these
yeah,
comedians or these guys who are typecasted to be complete goofs, just kill it when they get a chance. Matthew McConaughey, great
yeah,
example. You know,
yeah.
Adam
We talked
Sandler,
about
Uncut
that.
Gems, he killed it. These guys, they get these opportunities and they go all the way, to the finish line.
Yeah, it's something about comedians the way they see the world. They make great dramatic actors. They have a range to them. They can do funny
The
because
reason
comedy is
why
one of
they're
the hardest
funny,
things.
yes, because the reason why they're funny is because they're tapping into something that tortures or is pretty much dements them,
Right,
and that's pretty much the same secret sauce that provides them, I think, the ability to have that range.
right.
They
Yeah,
don't
man. I
have to
mean,
method act because they can touch into something that is paralyzing. You know,
exactly. Like they got that in their back pocket. I mean, I'm looking at a lot of these, and I mean, I kind of agree with them, man. Like I'm just skimming right now, but I mean, looking at all these winners and the nominees, I kind of agree with it all. Like you said, like we said before, animated feature, I would have went the other way. But the story behind Miyazaki, this was his last go
yeah,
around. This is his
yeah,
last movie.
of
Not
course,
only was this movie good, but it was kind of like a self biography about
yep.
the relationship between him and his mother and his father, and his long running studio, a studio that has inspired pretty much all the animators that we have today, who done stuff like Spider Man Across the Spider Verse. So the story was great behind this piece. It was a very personal fantasy,
This
grandiose
was his
piece.
first, right?
Who Miyazaki? Oh, first, yeah, first Oscar. That he's won. Um, I would say he should have won before, but you
Well,
know,
it's also animated films haven't really gotten I guess the due course of being acknowledged as like real art too.
I think the first. movie, Into the Spider Verse, back in 2018, was the first one to really like a pop culture animated movie to really get its due, so to speak, because it won animated feature back in
Mm-hmm.
2018.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
because
yeah,
everyone's like, "Oh, it's a Pixar movie. Let's just do that." You know what I mean?
yeah, it was yeah. For the longest time, it was basically just Pixar. Pixar, which so many animators talk about from Pixar, how they were inspired by Studio Ghibli's work,
They're
and they
doing
would just watch
fantastic
his
work for the
stuff.
most part. Like
Oh yeah, and for the most
they're,
part, it's always handcrafted. Like a
yeah,
lot of these
they
animated
keep Disney
features use
afloat.
computers.
They're keeping Disney afloat single
Oh,
handedly. I feel
oh yeah,
like right now.
Pixar. Well, I'm talking about Studio Ghibli. A lot of their
Yeah.
stuff is hand drawn still. Where a lot of these studios, and rightly so, they use computers for certain shots and characters. But
Who's the studio that does Wallace and Gromit where they use models and they actually like film the
uh,
models moving? That's a whole nother.
that's stop motion. That's a whole nother
Yeah.
beast, man. Like animation takes long. Stop motion takes so long, bro. And it's so
It's so
complicated.
cool to watch.
Oh yeah. If you haven't seen it, and this is for y'all out there too, check out Pinocchio by Guillermo del Toro on Netflix. It is mesmerized. There's certain things they talk about you don't do in stop motion because it takes too long and it's too hard, like moving the camera in a scene. Check out Pinocchio on Netflix, bro. Like the camera is moving. It's going in between characters and puppets, and it's crazy,
Your
bro.
camera also moves while
Yeah, I
you're
know.
doing
It's
that.
like there we go. But it's amazing, man. I would check it out, man, for sure.
So do you think Hollywood is finally doing some David Blaine
I'm trying to get this
stuff?
camera to reposition itself.
Do you think Hollywood's finally like decided to stop being absolutely just checking all the boxes for this stuff just for the sake of checking boxes for this? Like, do you think there's hope now? Meritocracy is like back on its way.
There is hope, but I said this a while ago. Like the movie industry is the last industry to learn any lessons.
Even all
Music and
this
all
money,
other.
even all this money being lost for all this stuff that people are really, frankly, tired of it. And I'm saying majority of the people. The fraction
Yeah,
10-15% that's just so happy that's fine. You guys don't spend enough money anyway, so we're not talking about you.
yeah,
Um,
and those 10-15% are the people who are the loudest and who've been causing all these issues, and they are the minority. And I feel like it's even less than 10% of the population. And I feel like the money has told us that it's the less than 10%. But like I think with Disney making all the moves behind the scenes, like they're not even telling people what they're
no,
doing.
they're like
We're
during their
figuring it out.
investment call, like during their investor call last, within an hour, they launched the guy who did live action and all this other stuff, and they consolidated positions. So you can tell that it's like because there's a lot of influential people on that board. They're like, okay, we're tired of this crap. We're done.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and like it's funny that you say that because I got news from Star Wars Theory. Check out Theory. Shout out to him. His YouTube channel. He was talking about how his source. Now it's just a source. Talked about how it wasn't EA's fault that lost all these video game contracts for Star Wars, shutting down all these Star Wars games. It was actually Bob Iger's doing because he wants to, because Disney bought Epic Games, they want all their games being done by Epic because they can control Epic. They own them. So instead of, you know, breaching contract, he told Bob Iger raised the royalties of every game to 33%. It was already 22, which is high. So he raised the royalties. So video game studios are like, look, we can't afford to spend all this money making a game and then not get all those profits. Like we're
Because a
already
lot
giving
were
you
canceled.
22%. Yeah, so they had no choice but to cancel it, and that's what Disney wants. They want those games to be canceled by those other studios so that Epic Games can be the only one making those games, and because it gives Disney full control of the Unreal video game engine for their movies and video games.
Unbelievable that Respawn, who has done fantastic work in the last two Jedi Survivor and, Fallen Order games, you
Mm-hmm.
would think that they would be like the flagship company to do this stuff, but masterful work.
I
But
mean,
Disney, once again, shooting themselves in the foot with everything. It's a tale as old as time itself. They're just going to continue making these bad moves, and it comes to show maybe Bob Iger wasn't like this messiah that was hyped up to be.
there's no doubt that he did great work, but this is a different
So did
environment.
Kathleen Kennedy, but now look,
I was
Kathleen
just about
Kennedy's
to say
resume.
that.
Kathleen Kennedy is responsible for a lot of stuff, a lot of fantastic stuff. Like her resume is unbelievable. You guys got to go look at it. It's movies you
It's
even think she
almost
was part of. She was a part of.
it's almost too unbelievable. It's like this chick came out of nowhere. It was making blockbusters in the 80s. Out of nowhere, her name just
Yeah,
started popping up.
yeah.
Like she must have been the PA of somebody important who gave her a shot. And literally, like, well, not literally, but like overnight, she just became one of the biggest producers of so many, like, some of the stuff that
She
I
did
grew up with.
Jurassic Park too, I think.
I believe
Something,
so.
dude. I mean, it's like that. I was looking at the list. I'm like, she did that? What of all this, But hey,
Yeah.
just because you're as good as your last check-in, and lately she hasn't done anything.
Nah. Disney hasn't done anything. They've been shutting everything down. And it's like, look, we're glad, you're shutting down stuff. But because you've been doing too much, that's one of the complaints. Quality over quantity. Give us quality over quantity. They've been doing too much. But the problem is your business model. Like the way you've been making these things. So even if you shut it down to like a couple movies a year, what are those couple movies going to be? Because lately you've been amiss to where like I personally haven't been watching anything on Disney for a while. I haven't watched any new Disney stuff. I haven't watched Disney Plus really.
When
I
they shift, the industry is going to shift.
I feel like they're putting all their money and time into Deadpool and Wolverine. And I I know people are hopeful. I am not because it's Disney. And two, I've been saying this for years. Disney has been relying on cameo actors to propel a IP, which is funny because I'm like, you call the movie Deadpool and Wolverine. We've known Hugh Jackman's been in this movie for 2 years now, and then the trailer
I
comes
don't know.
out and
Like
you don't even show him.
Ryan Reynolds is almost too big to be told what to do with this stuff. Like the man's essentially a billionaire. He's extremely successful besides doing movies. Good for him. And I don't know. Like I don't think that Disney's going to mess up Deadpool in a way because I think it's its own contained thing.
I don't know, bro. Like I don't know because at the same time, it has to
We're
fit into the
trusting Ryan
Marvel.
Reynolds though. We gotta trust Ryan Reynolds' decision
But he's
making
just
more than
one
anything.
dude, man. Like
Well, how
he,
many
it has
billionaires
to.
actors do Disney, employs?
Uh,
None. He's the only one. He's
that's
the only one.
true.
He's got a lot of sway, dude. I'm telling you, don't underestimate the sways that he has. Like he's got a ton.
I'm sure he does. The guy without movies, he's like a business guru or whatever.
Yeah, he sold that cell phone company for a couple billion. He has that soccer team in
Yeah.
England with Ron McEnhaney. Like,
And that's just the stuff that we know of.
yeah, dude.
I'm sure
Tequila.
he's
Take your
doing.
pick, dude. Him and
Oh
Mark
yeah, tequila's
Wahlberg,
too.
man. Like guys like that. It's like, and I feel like Mark Wahlberg made the right choice because now he's kind of just in the Apple TV bubble, and you can kind of tell Apple's like in its own like wavelength with this nonsense. And I feel like the really successful ones are staying like in the Netflix, the Amazon, the Apple TVs, like the streaming services versus,
Because
Disney.
it's a sure check, man. All this other
Well, there's
stuff,
more
all this
freedom.
nonsense.
There's more
Yeah,
freedom.
and you notice people are staying away from Warner Brothers because Warner Brothers is known for greenlighting stuff and then shelving it or getting rid of it,
I
and
want to
people
see
are
their
just sitting on it.
archives of everything they've shelved and see like,
There's probably stuff we don't even know about.
yeah, lots of
That's
tax
crazy.
deductions.
Jesus. I mean, hmm, who would have thought that they would just make movies in order to get money? Like, let's spend all this money just so we can write it off and get money back. Like, what? What?
So
Oh.
Henry Cavill's getting busy again.
Yeah, yeah, man.
I'm
I'm so
happy.
glad that the Highlander remake is still on
Yes, yes,
on the
yes.
table. Um,
He's in that Guy Ritchie movie that's coming out.
yes, big fan of Guy Ritchie,
Love Guy
so I'm
Ritchie.
definitely gonna watch that. Fan of Henry Cavill, definitely gonna watch that. That looks good. I actually, the funny thing is, you saw Argyle. That movie kind of looks like a Matthew Vaughn movie. When
Yeah,
when I
so
saw
I
that,
thought it was Guy Ritchie who did Argyle. I was like, this is
nah,
exactly his type of thing. It was Matthew Vaughn. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I
Matthew
feel like
Vaughn. For me, no offense to them, Matthew Vaughn and Guy Ritchie are kind of interchangeable to me with their
no,
styles.
Matthew Vaughn is if you add Guy Ritchie and Wes Anderson put together.
I don't know about that. After X Men First Class, remember
Go
he did
watch,
that.
go watch Argyle, and you'll see exactly the Wes Anderson stuff I'm talking about. The story inside the story inside the story inside the story. It's like Inception for stories.
So basically, he's more like a more entertaining Wes Anderson.
I like Wes Anderson movies if I have the bandwidth to actually like watch it. But having a kid, I don't have a bandwidth to think about stuff like that. It's
Oh yeah,
impossible.
yeah, bro.
What did you that Meteor City movie? I had to actually look it up what this meant. What and it was purposely meant to be confusing. I was like, well, that's not fun because I want to see the juxtaposition of where we're at with like, okay, so this is a guy who this is about a movie about a writer in a screenplay of the guy who's an actor in a TV show.
You just said that, and already in my head, I'm like, just stop talking, man. Like, I don't want to hear anymore.
Did you so the movie is mostly about the guy who's being written about. It's his character in the TV show. You're like,
Mhm.
who the heck is this guy? And all of a sudden it like goes back to the writer every once in a while. It's like, I don't understand why this is entertaining.
I don't. Excuse me, but I mean, I I'm his stuff is not really my kind of stuff, but I understand his genius and I understand, he's a
I
great.
like his stuff, dude. There's good stuff that Grand Budapest Hotel, fantastic. Love it.
Yeah, I still gotta check that out. But
What? How have
yeah,
you not watched that?
you say that every time, and it's been
I still don't
years.
understand. That's one of the but it's not confusing. There's no like multi it's just it's a linear story, which is rare for him. And I think that's part of the reason why it's so enjoyable.
Mm.
I feel
Yeah,
like
I'll
these
check it
actors
out.
who get these stories are like, "What is this?" There's like read your lines, you'll be fine. You know,
I feel
type
like
of
with
thing.
him, he's earned the trust where people are just like, I'll
How
just
I
read the
mean,
lines.
he's won how many Oscars? 2, 3, something like that.
Yeah, he's the guy.
He
He's the guy
doesn't
for sure.
make he doesn't make like blockbuster movies, but he makes movies that every person in the Oscars like relish to watch a movie for because that's exactly what they're looking for.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Um, one could even say that about Oppenheimer. You look at Oppenheimer, and it was like an Oscar baity movie, but it was so pop culture that like even the masses were like, "Yo, this better
It
win
fulfilled
Oscar."
both.
Yeah, yeah, because
But
he's
dude,
that
Killian
guy.
Murphy was the best.
Yeah,
I love Jeffrey Wright. Trust me, I love him. He deserved as much love, or Paul Giamatti, but no one was touching Killian Murphy in that. Like that was why Killian Murphy just now gets this type of acknowledgement when he has been on this for a while. Like in terms of like how good his movies are. And Chris Nolan, he uses him a lot for a reason.
yeah, and Christopher Nolan knows what people to put in which parts, and he was saving Cillian Murphy for a great meaty part, and this was the role.
His homecoming.
Exactly. And I'm glad you. Speaking of Oppenheimer, um, this just proves what Denis Villeneuve said, the director. He said that there isn't like movie fatigue, or there isn't that whole attention span thing where people
Mm-mm.
can't watch things. That's BS. Because look at Oppenheimer. Everybody wanted it to win. It won.
Three and a
You know
half
how much
hours.
money that movie made? That movie was
Tons.
3 hours long. Look at Dune Part 2. Like, what it's doing in the box office is crazy. That movie is 2 hours and 46 minutes, easily 3 hours with the previews. All
The
right.
biggest movies ever known to man to make the most money. Let's go through it real fast, right?
Lord of
On
the
top of
Rings,
my head. You got Avengers Part 2, which was, what, 3 hours long?
like 2 hours of 45. Yeah.
Okay. Titanic. Cameron doesn't make short movies.
No, he does
And then we
not.
obviously have the granddaddy of all of them. That's Avatar. Both of them. They're like, a total of 10 hours together. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, and
Every Lord of
they
the
make
Rings
all
movie
the
was
money.
3 hours. The theatrical cut was 2 hours and 58 minutes each. Like, he cleanly cut those to 2 hours and 58 minutes, so no one can say it was a 3 hour movie. But those three movies, the theatrical cuts, were 3 hours, and people sat in those theaters and watched them. All right, I wasn't one of them. I was too young at the time, but
All right, but
no.
Lord of the Rings: Return of the King theatrical version, 3 hours 20 minutes.
Oh yeah. That's right.
All right, but since you've seen Dune, I did not go to the theaters to see Dune. Did you get that Dune popcorn bucket that everyone's talking about?
Hell no, I did not get that popcorn. Shoot, man.
I'm seeing
No.
some crazy stuff that people are doing to those buckets.
Yeah. Who was in that marketing room at the R&D room? It was like, this was a great idea. We knocked it out the park. Or either a room of idiots, or they're a room of geniuses who are like, yo, they will not stop talking about this. We got to make this now.
I saw that bucket. I was like, I see the appeal.
I saw one picture. I was like, okay, stop. Like, what are we doing?
But
What
dude,
are we
stuff
doing?
like that people are talking about. You're like, you know what? It has nothing to do with the movie, and that's fine.
Wow. But before we get into Dune 1984, I
Ooh,
just want to say Dune Part 2 was amazing.
is it
Amazing.
the best
Almost
sci-fi
everything that I.
movie
Oh,
in most recent memory?
yeah.
Really?
Yes.
You sure?
Yes.
Okay. What
And
about
recent.
that Zack Snyder
Recent.
movie that just came out from Netflix? What was that called?
Bro, stop.
I already forgot
Rebel
about it.
Moon.
Rebel Moon. Fantastic movie.
Stop, bro. Stop.
Dang, Godzilla and Kong come out in soon too. So let's hold its breath to see. Let's hold our breath to see how good that is.
Well, we already know how that's going to be.
Fantastic.
Not knocking it. It's going to be great. It's going to be entertaining. It's not going to be like Dune. That's a different kind of like sci-fi kind of stuff.
Well, we'll wait when Francis Coppola's movie Megalopolis comes out. When we see that, I'm sure that will take the cake because that man just makes home runs every time he makes a movie.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's going to be dope, and I can't wait for it. I mean, the card is stacked for that. So,
How many A-listers can you fit in a movie?
I mean, ask Christopher Nolan, ask Francis Ford Coppola. Like, these guys
Well,
just be stacking their
Francis has been
list.
doing it longer than Nolan was even a thought. I feel like his
Yeah,
parents are still younger than Coppola's been making movies.
yeah. It's like Oppenheimer came out, and then Coppola was like, you know what? Hold my beer. Let me
Yeah,
show you.
I've been making this bad boy for a hot minute. Just wait.
Yeah, let me show you what a real cast list is. Get the hell out of here with your little bombs. But
Hey,
but yeah, I mean, Dune was great. Um, I was
Timothy
going to see it
Chalamet was
again.
good.
Yeah, man. I've seen him in quite a few things.
Hmm.
Um, where he's kind of played the same character to me. Again, I didn't see Wonka, so I heard he was good in that, but he's kind of been like the little pretty boy, which like we can
He's the
talk
new
about
Brad
that later.
Pitt, dude.
I don't think so because it was Brad Pitt. Not to be calling anybody out or anything, but Brad Pitt was still like a guy's guy, even though he was the it guy. Like Brad could do comedy, he could be the pretty boy, he could be the action star.
But Brad didn't do comedy early on. It took him a while for him to do that.
He was more like off kilter comedy. He wasn't like the comedy guy. He was like the sarcastic guy who the comic lead or supporting actor would bounce off.
Speaking of Brad Pitt, you know my favorite movies with him is Seven.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Kevin Spacey.
And see, and that's what I'm talking about. Like Brad Pitt could be any kind of role where he could have been pretty boy, he could have been a cop, he could have been whatever. Where I feel like Timothy Chalamet, a lot of these young actors now are just the pretty boy who's a method actor, and I'm just getting all this attention. But like Timothy Chalamet, yo, in this movie, you see him rise to be the guy, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to believe that he's the leader of these warriors. And man, there's one scene where I'm like, I believe you, bro. Like where he finally accepts his path, and he gives this. It's not really a speech where it's like he's like, "Yo, I'm that guy," and he literally challenges everybody in the room, like, "Can't nobody come at me." And it was like, "Yo, oh snap, what's really good?" Like, and I feel like he pulled off that scene to where I've never seen him act like that. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm like, oh, like usually he's like the guy with the pretty curly hair, and he's the love interest of the other girl, and but this time I was like, oh snap! Like even though he's like 120 pounds soaking wet, I'm like, okay, I can see why they follow this dude. For real, for real. So I believe it. I believed it, and he did good. Everybody in that cast kills it, bro. Kills it. I mean, Austin Butler
Who's another guy who's
as
just
Fade
all over the
Rotha.
place lately? Austin
Yeah,
Butler? I
who's
love
also
him,
a
dude.
method actor. He's a method actor, and he talked about how he had to tone down his method acting to play a psychopath because he's like, I don't want to get too deep into this role.
He's in the show Masters of the Air on Apple TV. Fantastic, dude. I
Yeah,
love Austin
yeah.
Butler.
So yeah, it was great, man. Like I almost felt like, how we talk
How
about
was
a movie
Christopher
should
Walken
earn.
as the Emperor?
He was good. I mean, it's more like a cameo role. He's not in the movie that much, but he's in there. He's just not in there that much.
Can you
And
imagine having such an Christopher Walken can do anything he wants, right? And it's just he's got such a legendary appeal, and he's just the guy for that type of stuff.
and he probably got one of the highest paychecks out of anybody in that movie. And
Well, yeah,
he's only
dude.
there for like maybe 10 minutes of a 2 hour and 46 movie. He's just sitting down. He's like, Paul Atreides is dead. I don't want to say otherwise.
Stellan
Like
Skarsgård is, what do you think?
oh yeah, Baron. Oh yeah,
Love
he's
him.
eating up his scene. I thought it
I
was
love
cool
Stellan.
that Austin Butler went to a vocal coach so that because he plays a character who's the nephew of the
Yeah.
Baron, he wanted to sound like Stellan Skarsgård. So it made sense, that he sounded like him. But yeah, everybody's just eating up the scene. I mean, Greg Fraser. I didn't check the Oscars list. Well, I don't even know if Dune was able to. It might have been
Dune
too
wasn't
early.
eligible.
But I wouldn't be surprised if Greg Fraser wins Best Cinematography for Dune Part 2 on the scene of the Harkonnen planet alone. Like that scene is crazy. And it's the camera that they use for it. They use the infrared camera on those things to get that black and white high contrast image. And it's just amazing and watching fight scenes on there.
So you give a guy like Villeneuve a bunch of money, and he's able to make a masterpiece.
Yeah, and I like Villeneuve. You know what? You know why I like his style? It reminds me of Lord of the Rings. One of the greatest, if not the greatest, fantasy franchise ever. where it was like it was
Best
fantasy, but
shot
it
movie
was
ever.
yeah, yeah, and with limited technology at the time. It was shot like subtly with fantasy, even though it's full fantasy. You know, it's grounded fantasy to make you believe that this could happen, that this did happen, which is what um Tolkien wanted. He was like, this could be a precursor to England. So this could be a history to how England started. So it made sense to ground everything and to make the costumes look like period pieces and stuff in Lord of the Rings. Denis Villeneuve does that with sci-fi. He's been doing it from the beginning with that movie Enemy with Jake Gyllenhaal. It's a great movie. It's an indie film people should watch. Um, Blade Runner 2049, Arrival. Arrival is one of the greatest sci-fi movies of all time, and it has no action. It's literally just a talking piece between aliens and people. Like
Fantastic movie still. Jeremy Renner,
fantastic
man.
movie. Yeah, Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams and Forrest
Amy
Whitaker.
Adams.
Like it's great, and he did it with Dune 1 and Dune 2. Like Dune, I was looking up some videos about the books. It's batshit crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Um, Dune 84, batshit crazy, but he finds a sweet spot between the absurdity and the groundedness to bring you a good piece of entertainment that
You don't want
is
the
believable.
absurdness of this. David Lynch, when he did his original one in '84, was like, dude, and every David Lynch movie is like this. It's just like,
Did you know that he disowns this movie,
what, dude?
Dune 84?
He disowns it.
He
Does he
disowns it.
disown
He
Blue
hates it.
Velvet? Because he should.
From what I heard, this is the only movie that he disowns that he's made. He
Why?
hates it to a passion. So basically, the producers on the film didn't let him change anything from the script, didn't let him make any changes. Um, they were on him on set constantly to keep things the way they wanted to. So he wasn't able to condense anything, change anything to make it more digestible. So when I hear that, it makes me think that it was the producers who wanted to cram the whole of book one into a 2 hour movie. Whereas, the recent Dune, part one and part two are just book one. That's it. There's 6 books that Frank Herbert made, and then there's a bunch that his son made after he died. But yeah, like there's so much stuff in Dune, the first book, to cram it into a 2 hour movie is insane to me. Um, to the point that certain things happen in '84 Dune that they just gloss over, like Chani and
And there were some big
Paul.
people in that movie too, like Patrick Stewart,
Max
Sting,
von Sydow. I always mispronounce his name.
Sting. You know, the lead
Sting,
singer for the
who was Fade
Police.
Rotha, is the same character that Austin Butler's playing. Yeah, like Sting. Like who would have thought that? Like that was
Well,
uh
that's why I can. That's why I compare it to the Labyrinth with David Bowie so much because
uh
it's all
yeah.
trippy with how it's shot, and you got to sing. You know, you got a famous singer in there, and it's just why not?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but that movie is interesting. So you've read the book.
Yes.
So I'm going to need to because I'm there's no way I'm reading the book, but like I'm going to
You
need to
sure?
rely
Because
on
the
you.
I mean, the book isn't. Here's the thing: the book isn't worth the. What's the word I'm thinking of? It's not worth the bandwidth for you to read it if you've already watched the movies.
Hmm.
I don't know. Like, I mean, it was written a long time ago, and you know, the writer was a what's his name, Herbert, right?
Frank
Is it
Herbert.
Frank Herbert? Yeah.
Hmm.
It's he is a product of his time, you
Right.
know. So the book is going to represent that, like pretty much anything else. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was around the same time you had Narnia, Lord of the Rings, kind of being written
Yeah.
in that same time period, right?
Right.
And Herbert's English as well, if I'm mistaken.
I'm not sure.
So he's just like, No, he's
No, the
American.
English were killing it back in the day.
No,
Oh no, he's
he's from
American.
Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. Word up. G's up. USA. Let's go. You know what I'm saying?
And I mean, it's a series. There's 6 different books that he wrote,
Right, six.
and I feel like what the movies now are kind of starting to. It's like The Witcher, where not each season is a book, but it's like putting themes of each of like the first 2 books in each movie to kind of condense it,
Mhm.
because a lot of it's just fluff. It's just whatever, and it's not really important. Um, I don't know. I would probably compare it to The Tower in terms of like
Yeah,
sci-fi with
I love the
Stephen King.
tower.
Yeah,
Um, so I will say, like, now are the books as like gory and grotesque as Dune 1984? Like, we have the Baron who's like, I just want to spit in your face, just a spittle. Like, he just like,
he
is that in the
doesn't.
books where he just spits in her?
uh,
I don't know if you
no,
remember.
no, I don't think it being that theatrical. You gotta keep in mind, this is David Lynch. He's going to do stuff that was shocking. He was like one of the first, like, if Saw came out in like the 80s, David Lynch would have made it.
I believe it. I mean, when I saw the movie, I was like, "Oh, this is definitely a David Lynch film." So I was surprised when I saw that he disowns him, and it's maybe just because he was like, "Look, I couldn't tell what I wanted; they wouldn't let me change it." Frank Herbert saw the film and he actually liked it. He just didn't like the overarching theme of the film. So
Yeah,
Frank Herbert, you probably remember, his books are all about the fallacy of prophecy. You know, like the
yeah.
Bene Gesserit in the Dune universe, they plant the prophecy about the one, about Paul, about the super being, and they use genetic experimentation to try to make the super being. So it's all fake, you
He
know.
was draw a lot of his inspiration in terms of Dune was like kind of came from the mistreatment of like natives.
Yes,
So Herbert's
especially
like
the Middle
mentor was like
Easterns.
really pro, like natives rights and stuff, and him growing he grew up in like Oregon and stuff, so a lot of the dunes out in the Pacific Northwest and out here kind of drew inspiration of like the planets and stuff like that, if I
Yeah,
remember
especially
correctly.
like the war in the Middle East. I mean, it's obvious the Fremen are modeled after, the Middle Easterns with the language and the names. Some of the names in the
The
books are
mines,
literally
because there's a lot of
just.
mines in the Middle East, so it's the same kind of
Oh
thing. You
yeah,
have to, yeah. So there's like a
exactly,
material that everyone needs, so it's like oil essentially. You know what I mean? Same thing.
exactly.
Yeah,
Even the words are like literally Arabic words. He didn't change certain
yeah,
words
or
and
Farsi.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So like yeah, like that's what the books are, and that's what Denis Villeneuve's movie did, part two. It actually keeps that essence, whereas in Dune 1984, it ends with him um literally bringing rain to the planet after he ascends to the throne. And Frank Herbert had a quote saying, I'm going to paraphrase, where he said, I like the movie, but the idea of Paul Atreides was to show that he was playing God, not that he was a literal God that brings rain. So I thought that was interesting that he still liked it, even though it kind of messed up his image. Like, I think he even said in his own words, he didn't like the white savior aspect of it.
no, because
Like,
it was the complete opposite of where his. It was the white man who was causing this. It was the complete
yeah,
opposite of what the white savior thinks. So of course he was going to have reservations on that.
yeah. Whereas if you watch the new Dune, it's not a what's it called? Spoiler to say, Paul's against it. He's against this whole notion of the prophecy because he knows it's fake. His mom is one of the people who orchestrated the prophecy, and so it's more in line with the books. And even the changes, I watched the videos on the changes of Denis Part Two versus the book, and the changes that Denis made is actually pretty smart in the script to further show what Herbert would say about politics and religion that are merged together. So
Just like the Middle East.
Exactly. Exactly. And a little bit like the U.S., even though we try not to admit it. Even
The
though, no, it's separated.
well, it's even though it's not, it's made the basis of our laws and allow capitalism to live. So it's not as bad as like
Yeah,
at
it's
least it's
not
not
as
it's
bad.
not suppressive in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we're not going to
Um,
stone you if you come out dressed a certain
showing your
way.
face, yeah.
Yeah,
So would you? So this the David Lynch movie. What do you think? You like it or not?
it's not my cup of tea.
So no, it's
No.
awful. Doesn't make sense. None of it makes
David
sense.
Lynch is not really my cup of tea,
No,
period.
no. The people that like him pretend to think they're smart and they think they know what he's doing, and it doesn't make sense. It's like
I mean, it's like you said. I went looking for an open mind because you warned me about it, and
I
then
gave you a big warning.
there's a screenwriter that I follow who loves it still to this day.
What?
Who's a great screenwriter? Who's a great movie? He used to be a movie reviewer too, but he loves it. He talked about recently how he saw Dune Part Two recently, and then he went back and watched Dune 1984, and he still loves it in his own vein. Now, just know this guy is over 50 years old, so he was born in a time where you didn't have an abundance of sci-fi and comic book movies. Like you got what you got. You know what I'm saying? Like you couldn't just go on TV, pop in a streaming service, and watch your favorite sci-fi movie. So
Right, right.
he comes in a time like that where they barely made movies like this. You know,
Yeah. So
he had
this is
Star Wars and
groundbreaking.
Dune. Yeah, Star Wars, Dune, Terminator. That was it. You
And
know,
Star Trek.
and Last Starfighter. That was it. But like, they didn't really movies like this. So he read the book too, and he loves the book and he loves the movie, but he can see why people don't like it. So I went in this with an open mind, and I was like, yeah, this ain't for me. this this ain't for me, bro. Like even when you're adapting something, it's your job to adapt it. So there's some things you need to take out and put in, depending on your audience and depending on what story you want to tell. Now I get it; he didn't get to tell the story he wanted to tell because of the producers. But even the scenes that were in the movie, some of them were just like the Fremen aren't even there; they're just extras. in David Lynch's movie, there's one Fremen who talks, and it's Stilgar, who Javier Bardem plays in the new Dunes. But he stands still every time he talks. He's like, Al Qaib, you shall now be the Fremen, and your name will be Moadib. And I'm like, does no one have any emotion in the Fremen? How am I supposed to sympathize with these people if you're not showing them? You're only showing the other houses.
You know who would have done a good job with this movie back then? Stanley Kubrick.
Ah, yeah. Why?
He made one
Yeah,
of the greatest sci-fi movies ever, Space Odyssey 2001.
yeah. That people still reference to this day. I mean, Barbie
Scary shit,
referenced it.
dude. Like, especially with AI and stuff, that's the first thing that comes to mind. Like, yo, just letting you know, like, there's a risk of that happening.
Yeah, man. That's a good choice, man. That's a real good choice. Stanley
But you can
Kubrick.
tell David Lynch kind of like resonates with that. I feel like it's very similar in terms of like how they make their movies, especially with Clockwork Orange. Have you ever seen that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Crazy twisted movie.
What's a crazy
Crazy.
twisted book?
Yeah, man.
So, but
Crazy.
no, you can tell his movies kind of emulate that same type of. It's like a neo-punk type of thing, like kind of like how
Yeah.
Blade Runner is, in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. 100%. Yeah. Now I want to see that movie, the Stanley Kubrick Dune,
He didn't
because
make that. He should have done it.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and the thing is, not Frank Herbert. David Lynch turned down Star Wars Episode 6 for Dune, and he wanted to do his own thing, and it was a nightmare for him. So karma.
Yeah, it would have
But
been a nightmare for him in episode 6.
yeah, probably. But yeah, imagine David Lynch and directing Star Wars. That would have been batshit crazy.
So when the Death Star explodes, it's not just an explosion, but it's like goo that comes out of the sky and lands on the planet.
Yeah, like all the people's entrails. Ah. Can you imagine like the Ewoks dying on the planet? It would have been
Yeah,
like,
Ewoks and people are having relationships and orgies and stuff like that. That's what it would turn into.
oh my god, yeah, like,
So,
mm,
do you think that was smart though for him to turn down Star Wars? Like, how would that have worked out for him?
um, I don't think it would have been a good fit. I mean, because we talked about this beforehand. Star Wars, when it was just Star Wars, was one thing, and then and then what's his name? George Lucas decided to make it a franchise, and he decided to make it for kids. He kind of Disneyfied it. So I don't think David Lynch would have had a good run with Star Wars. I think it would have been the same exact experience that he had with Dune, where the producers were like, "No, you can't do this, you can't do that. Look, we're trying to appeal to kids. This is why we have little
He's
teddy
never
bears fighting."
he's
You know,
never made a kids movie ever.
no, no. So I don't. I think he would have been as miserable as he was on the set of Dune if he did Star Wars,
Hmm.
because Dune is crazy, man. Like for like especially with the Harkonnens, it's like he wanted people to feel uncomfortable. Like he's bathing in blood and he's just disgusting. Like I was like, is this why Hollywood hates redheads for whatever reason? Because of Dune, because the Harkonnens in Dune 84 are just redheads. That's all they are with weird haircuts. And I wonder if that's in the book. Do you remember how the Harkonnens were described in the book at all?
Mm-mm.
Because in Denis' version, they're just bald and very, very pale because they have a black sun on their planet. And I'm like, a black sun would not cause your hair to be red. I don't think so. So yeah,
Let's
and
look.
yeah, and fun fact: Dune 1984's the sound devices that they use was a David Lynch creation. He
So
said,
they won an Oscar for sound mixing
"Oh, okay,
for that movie, by the way.
right on, right on." I mean, their weapons were made of sound,
All
so
right, so they were tall, muscular men with red gold hair and distinctive widow's peak.
really, so David Lynch kind of got it right. I mean, they weren't tall in his movie; they were kind of like big, but whatever. Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting that Denis' version would go the other route, just make them bald and like buff guys. Whereas David Lynch was like, let's make him redheaded and kind of chunky.
Well, think of it, right? Like you said, people are apprehensive towards redheads. Is that the reason why it was like that in the 80s? Like, oh, there's no redheads. Like, they're kind of universally hated in this space, so why not, make them the enemy?
Respect, respect. But the sound devices in the movie were a David Lynch creation because I'm paraphrasing, said he can't imagine kung fu in his movie. So instead of, because it's called the Benny Gesserit way or something like that, they have a
Yeah, yeah,
martial
yeah.
arts in there.
Yeah, yeah.
So he decided, no, we're just going to have sound devices where they're just going to speak, and it will, cause it will be a weapon. And I thought that was kind of corny to me. And I know I'm biased because I grew up on martial arts films. That's how I got
Plus,
into
you
film.
like martial art movies and fights and stuff.
Exactly. So for a guy to completely write that out of a book adaptation because he can't see kung fu in his movies, I'm like, well, that's kind of
I
corny,
would have
man.
missed the cracking of the whip every time they kicked someone. The sound effects in the kung fu
Those sound
movies.
effects. Since it was the 80s and it was a big Hollywood blockbuster, the fight scenes would have been horrible. They would have been like
like
it
the
would have
like the
been
first Lethal
horrible.
Weapon.
Oh, come on, bro. Horrible. Yo, Hollywood, there are, if you look, man, like there are movies from the 60s, 70s, 80s. that are great martial arts films. But when they were big Hollywood films, the fight scenes were so bad. Still
Didn't
to this
age
day,
well.
it's like that.
Didn't
Still
age
to
well.
this day. I mean, I'm
Didn't
looking
age
at
well.
you, Mortal Kombat from 2021. Those fight scenes, aside from the last one, were horrible.
And you had CGI to make it look good. I don't understand. How do you make it bad when you have CGI to like carry
I
you?
don't know. I don't
I'm
know. Look at
serious. Like
the Matrix
CGI
Four.
is supposed to carry you for this stuff.
Well, it shouldn't, right? It should be a good mesh of the two. You shouldn't have to use CGI. That might be the mistake. Trying to use CGI. Oh, we'll fix it in post. No, just have them
Fix it in
fight. Have the
post.
camera wide
They say
enough
that,
so
and
you
it
can
ends
see
up
it.
being like the worst movie ever when they fix it in post because they don't have enough
Exactly.
time and deadlines approaching.
And a lot of these companies don't hire editors who know how to edit fight scenes. Like there's plenty of footage of the stunt team doing these elaborate fight scenes, and when they shoot it, they have directors or cinematographers who don't know how to shoot fight scenes, and they won't let the stunt team do it. And then they get it on the editing floor, and then they have an editor that doesn't know how to edit fight scenes. But I digress. That's a whole different conversation.
All right, sounds like you don't like it, which you've already said, but you would not recommend it. I wouldn't recommend it. And yeah, if you guys are interested in wasting an hour 40 of your time, watch Dune 84.
Yeah, man. Dune. Watch Dune Part 2 that's out in theaters right now. That's amazing. It sticks to what Frank Herbert was trying to say about politics and religion and the false savior idea. It's amazing. I'm curious to see what they're going to do after Dune. I know Denis working on Dune Messiah right now.
Is that the
Um,
last one?
for him, it is. I don't know if it's the last. I doubt it's the last one. Period. But he said he needs a break, so he's after Dune Messiah. He's done. He's going to take a break.
He's probably getting paid a lot of money now because these are hits.
Yes, yes, and people are already talking about how his Dune movies are redefining sci-fi and redefining movies as a whole, movie blockbusters as a whole. Because it's like someone said online, Marvel still makes their movies like it's 2008. Like they're still doing these like things you don't necessarily do. Like the audience, like every 10 years, the flavor of movies kind of changes. I mean, look at the Batman and look at Dark Knight. Like two great movies, but two very different movies that everybody still likes, but they're still very different. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like
Yes.
it almost seems like movies are the audience want more grounded stuff now. Even if it's sci-fi, even if it's fantasy, they still want more grounded stories shot in a more grounded way. Like the Batman and Dune and but like with Marvel with these CGI scenes that
They
look
don't want
like they're
everything fantastical and unbelievable.
no, we don't need all these green screens where things look like they were produced in 2005 and that's not to knock 2005 cuz uh Spider-Man 2 from 2004 is still one of the greatest comic book movies of all time and it still has
Yes.
great CGI. Its CGI looks a little dated but it still is aged well. So but Marvel is still trying to make their films on factories and they literally try to fix their films in post and it's got to stop. Because their films look bad. They look rushed. They look half done, like some of these video games that's come out nowadays. The only thing is, you can't fix a movie with a patch, even though they still do it on Disney Plus. They'll release a movie in theaters, and then when it comes on Disney Plus, some of the CGI is fixed or whatever. I'm like, stop doing that because by that time, people are like, "Yo, this is garbage." Stop doing that. Like, it's not working.
They just think that video game update or like, oh no, it's fixed now. It never existed.
Which is my theory as to why I think they want to stop making physical media and have everybody go to Disney Plus. That's one of the
Hey,
reasons. Obviously, a money thing.
George Lucas started that because of the episode 4. He changed the theatrical and the home release.
Yes, yes,
So
I do
Han
not
shot
agree with
first,
that.
didn't shoot first, even though he did.
Yes, that's why hashtag Han shot first. If you don't know what that means, now you know. All right, the real ones know Han shot first.
Yeah, so
and
the
that stupid
movies
solo
like
movie,
the
don't watch.
original one like actually had him shooting first, but George was like, how can a princess fall in love with someone who's a murderer? And that was the reason why they edited it to make it seem like he shot second.
Plenty of chicks out here, plenty of good girls be falling in love with sketchy dudes. Like, come on, bro. Like, you don't know how to write
It's the
romance. Just
nature
stop.
of things.
You don't know how to write romance. I mean, the guy still came back and helped the resistance
Yeah.
free the galaxy. So
But
come
all
on, man.
not all the rebels are good guys. Like that's why I like
No.
Andor so much. It's captivating because
Thank you.
it's people who are less than appealing banding up and doing the right thing.
See, I'm glad. I'm so glad you said that because I was watching. I think why Tolkien hated Disney, and Tolkien for the most part hated Disney because he didn't like how they would talk down to appeal to kids. He was like, stories will live on forever if you just don't try to dumb down your stories for kids. If you just let them read your stories, take some stuff out so it's appropriate. Don't make it Game of Thrones where everybody's having sex all the time. But like, still talk about these universal adult themes,
Mm-hmm.
and your kids will grow with your content. Look at Lord of the Rings. People still talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the first three Star Wars movies, episode 4, 5, and 6. People still talk about those
Mm-hmm.
because they're dealing with adult themes. And so the fact that you talked about Andor,
Adult
talk
themes.
about adult themes. Adult themes, man.
Yep.
And we'll talk about these from when we're 10 years old, first watching them
And I
till
don't
the
even
day that
remember
we
the
die.
Mandalorian stuff, but I remember Andor clear as day.
Facts. Bro, Andor had some of the coldest lines. I mean, Stellan Skarsgård. I said that right? Yeah, Stellan
Stellan,
Skarsgård.
yes.
His line of "I'm fighting for a sunrise that I will never see." Bro, it's one of the cold. Like I get chills. Like, yo, if I could write a line like that one day, like, come on, that is one of the coldest lines of all time, bro. Because
Yeah,
it
yeah,
says
yeah.
so much without saying enough. Like it's, bro, it's amazing, man. I have all these notes on Dune 1984, but I don't think anybody's gonna watch it because I don't recommend it. I mean, I
I'm glad
mean,
you did notes because it was painful for me to watch. I've seen it twice straight through. And that was
bro. I
enough.
mean, they skipped so many things that they had to rely on voiceover for everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
90% of the movie is just voiceover of people's thoughts, and I like how Denis changed it up where instead of doing voiceover, there's nothing wrong with voiceover, the Batman had. But like he changed it up to where they had their own singular hand sign language to tell
But
you
the
some
books
things
weren't
the
written in
characters
stream
thought.
of consciousness, which is the fascinating part.
They weren't, or
No,
they were. Oh,
we're
they
not.
weren't. Okay. So that was purely a Dune 84 thing to move the story along, where the
Yes.
princess Urulan is telling the story as is, and then you would hear Paul's thoughts, you would hear his mom. Everybody's what they were thinking was in their head. And I would argue with good acting and directing, you can get emotion across without having
Well, you
to.
can get through without having voiceovers. Like the whole point of the story and dialogue is to push the story so you can understand it, not have a voiceover tell you what you're missing.
Right, right. And I just thought it was laughable that the Fremen, I said before, didn't really know them. Chani, Paul's girlfriend, she does nothing but just like, I'll follow you anywhere, Usul. Like she's just a pretty face. She just goes, which I heard is what happened in the book, which is funny because in Denis part two, he changed her character to where she's against Paul doing all this stuff, and it's really cool to see their dynamic, how they have their relationship, and then all of a sudden she starts pushing back because he's doing certain things. It was very interesting to see. You'll see that when you see the movie. Um, I was impressed. I will say I was impressed for I was impressed with their special effects in 1984 with the amount of stuff that they did. And I'm like, oh, I know how they did that, but it's still impressive that they were able to do the worm riding,
Yes.
the
Which is the most memorable thing of that movie is the worm.
yes. I mean, they had multiple worms, just like you see in the new one, but it was because I saw Denis Villeneuve first, And so I saw the Warren Ride. I'm like, oh, I wonder how they're going to do this in 1984. Like how you do that. I was like, oh, it's pretty. Yeah, you would do it that way. It's not as climactic, but technology back then was what it was. You had a lot of miniatures, and you had a lot of sets. You had a lot of rear projection shots of them on something, and then they just project the film.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of felt like everybody who was Fremen and Dune 84 kind of acted like all the freedom fighters act in the Matrix movies. Remember how in the Matrix trilogy, everybody who was a human acted like the machine, whereas the machines acted more human.
Hmm.
So that's how I felt like the Fremen acted. Like, Paul, you are the one. I want to give you this sword. Like, I was like, why is everybody acting like that? Who's Fremen? Like, it was weird. Like, his mate was like, you just saved my life. I could have died. I came here to give you a message. It
It's
was
like
like,
a android or something. Like, oh man, this
yeah,
is like crazy.
everybody acted like that. But yeah, man, I know you gotta go. I know I gotta go too. But yeah, I just wanted to throw some things out there. If you're not really invested, even if you read the books, I would say still you could probably skip 84. I would just say watch um the new Dunes because they're pretty good, and even the changes that Denis made
Watch
really
84
fit.
just to say you watched it.
Yeah, especially if you're a guy like me who's interested in film and want to see the comparisons and stuff. It's interesting to see what they adapted and what they changed, but I was like, oh, how they're going to do? They did that. Oh, okay. But there's some things in Dune 84 you get to see that they don't have in the new ones, like space
Right.
travel, how it's done. You're not moving. It's kind of like teleportation, or it's kind of like you just appear. But the way they do it, they even show the one guild, the space traveling guild,
Yes.
in 84 that they don't show in the new ones, and those weird humanoid, because everybody's human. They're just different
Types of
kinds of
human.
humans.
Yeah.
Yeah, different types of human. And Herbert wanted to emphasize,
Yes.
um, the resiliency of humanity and how it evolves and mutates with different environments. Like that one thing is a human. It's just that thing floating in the tank is a human, but it's just been affected by spice and stuff for so long. But that being said, George Lucas took a lot from Frank Herbert. I mean, spice, the desert planets, the worms, the desert
Yes.
people. He took
Yes.
so much. He was really banking on that nobody would watch or read Dune. You know? And now it's like, you stole a lot, my friend. You stole a lot. But hey,
It is what it is. Price of success.
yeah, he basically just took Dune and Disney-fied it, like someone said. But it is what it is. I still love Star Wars. The original. Wow.
Yeah, of course. Me too.
But yeah, my Nomads, this was a good one. Like we said, you can check it out if you want. We're not forcing you. We don't necessarily recommend it, but hey, if you're curious, check it out. But Dune 1984, what do you think? Let us know. Uh, Peace, be creative, my Nomads.